When he called me to, I don't know if I was voluntold or asked me to participate. And I'm going to try and quote you directly on this one here, because I don't want to misrepresent what he said, but he was like, hey, listen, I'd really love to have you come to this event on workforce development, because you guys you know people issues, you fix recruitment and retention, you're like the gold standard for culture in the area. Is that what you said there? Obviously, that's not the case. I'm not standing up here as like a subject matter expert or anything else. We have had our fair share of wins and losses and challenges over the last 10 years as we've started the kind of growth path that we're on. And so, we're not, we're just glad to be here. We've got a great line, a great couple speakers here today, and looking forward to the breakout sessions that we're going to have here in a minute. But yeah, so it's like, at Adams, we say stuff all the time. We say, like, our people are our power, or what we're most proud of, like Garrett said, what we're most proud of is the men and women that we work with every day. And all that's true, but saying that and meaning it, and then having that equate to really good engagement and really good culture, that's not just an automatic thing, as you all well know. And from our end, it's like we some of you, I think, have participated in the Top Workplace survey over the last several years. We have as well, and some of those years we've surveyed our team and the response on kind of where they're at and how our company is operating. And some years we've won, and we've been acknowledged for that from our team, and some years we haven't. And so I think we stand pretty well along with everybody in this room, whether you're in manufacturing, or you're in services, business, or you're in anything else. We're all experiencing the same challenges, and we're constantly thinking about how do we build this culture? How do we build a culture? Because our business is no different than all of yours, which is everybody that works in our building can get a job somewhere else tomorrow, and there's certainly somebody that's willing to pay them more money, right? So it's like we say this to our team every single year, especially like a Christmas party in the year. Things are, kind of the positive energy of that season. But we had that conversation and say, listen, it means something that everybody chooses to be here at Adams. And ultimately, the decisions that we're making on a daily basis are really boiled down in a simple fashion. It's like, how do we make our customers love us, and how do we make this the best place to work? And that's kind of the lens from which we think about things. Now, again, that's where the breakdown happens, I guess. So I think, what's amazing about culture and engagement and all of these things, and Liz, I think, brought this to attention. We utilized Liz Oplatka in the past. She's done leadership training and coaching and development for us, done a wonderful job. Good to see you again, Liz. And, a number of years ago, she brought up the Gallup 12 survey. Gallup is, a national survey organization. And they've actually been measuring culture and engagement, and I hope I'm not getting into your presentation, but it really comes down to like a simple. There are 12 questions that I think they've been doing for like 75 years or something ridiculous like that. And this is asked of employees at companies, and it's very simple. It goes, I know what's expected of me at work. I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right. At work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. In the last 7 days, I've received recognition or praise for doing good work. My supervisor or somebody at work seems to care about me as a person. There is someone at work who encourages my development. At work, my opinions seem to count. The mission or purpose of my company makes me feel my job is important. My associates or fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. I have a best friend at work. In the last 6 months, someone has talked to me about my progress. This last year, I've had opportunities to work, learn, and grow. And so it's funny because like this mystical thing about culture, engagement, retention, all the different stuff, it's like really, in some ways, it just boils down to 12 questions. And so and by the way, like I'm sitting up here today talking about this stuff to remind myself of the simplicity of some of this. And we're a part of WCEDA and the work that they're doing because we need to be in association with other companies because it's really easy to get the highs and lows of business and our economic environment and all the different headwinds and tailwinds that we experience for all of you who've experienced with us. You need to be in community with people that can actually come alongside you and remind you of those things, hold you accountable to them. And so that's what we do. That we're not only with Derek and WCEDA, but with some other with actually a handful of businesses that are actually WCEDA members here. And we've been at that for quite a while now. So yeah, I guess that's what it boils down to for me today. And I think that there's a lot that we need to continue to do. What I would encourage everybody in this room, and Derek actually asked me recently here, so we've got those WCEDA companies kind of serve as an mutual advisory board for all the companies that are involved. Palmer Hamilton is actually one of them. But we meet together on a monthly basis, and it's a heterogeneous group of businesses that all work together to help each other with their businesses. It could be on culture, it could be on business development, it could be on any number of different things. And so I think that's what I love about WCEDA is bringing all the businesses in this room together today. And Derek asked me the other day, he said, hey, listen, what do we need to do from a programmatic standpoint? How can we be doing what we're doing better? And I think it's a great question. There's no sense of just having an economic development organization here in Walworth County that we're not involved in. And it's like anything else. You only get into it or you get out of what you put into it. So how do we come together and say, what are the really sharp issues? And I think this is one of them that we should be talking about as businesses in our community. What are the ideas and things that we want Derek and the team to focus on? Because they really can be a significant impact on your business. So anyways, without further ado, I guess we've got our first speaker here. And Torosian. Steve Torosian. Is an executive recruiter, and for the last 28 years his focus is practice on permanent placement of engineering, operations, supply chain, and quality professionals in a smaller to mid-sized companies throughout the country. Steve knows there are good things happening in small towns, and most clients have a marketing problem, not a business problem. He's the owner of Forest Recruiting Group in Mount Pleasant and the founder of the Affiliated Recruiters Network. Additionally, he is an author and lead researcher on Thought Leaders Initiative. That project is captured and analyzed 35 hours of my conversations with manufacturing leaders regarding the challenges they face as 2025 began. The aggregated was compiled into a report that was shared with his clients and helped in charting their course for this year. He's here today to share his findings so that they might be of benefit to all of us. Thank you, Steve, and welcome to
Can everybody hear me too? I have a booming radio voice, so let's put this to work, right? I appreciate that introduction and the invitation from WCEDA, from Liz and Leslie, Derek, about speaking about something that's close to my heart. For 28 years, as I've talked about, as I've really learned, I've had a moment to every day talk to business leaders across the country in various disciplines. And really got a glimpse of what they do, how they do it, how decisions are made, how trauma happens. And I have great relationships. The community that Jesse was talking about is, I have a great community. I've worked with some really great organizations, some really great people, and have come to love them, and they have come to respect the work that I bring to them. And so it's good. I have a deep network of a well of knowledge. And so I thought in December of last year, I would just call them, and I created a little silly little survey. How was your 2024? How are you feeling about 2025? There is great change coming. How are you reacting to it? How is the workforce reacting to it? And how can I be a resource to you on how to move that forward, right? How to make that a little easier. And so I created a little silly survey, and I thought I would call and have 15-minute conversations with people that I feel are thought leaders, who are really at the cusp of creation of culture and creation of community and leading organizations forward. That 15-minute conversation historically, about 35 hours total, an accumulated conversation. And the survey was trashed by the second question. They were like, no, let's talk about something else, and let's go 1,000 different directions. And so the only suggestion I had is that they'd spend time with me and teach me what's happening, get a pulse on the ground, to get a feeling what's happening on the ground, that I would share that back with them, right? So that's where the report came in. It ended up to be about 30 pages. Pretty interesting stuff in my opinion. We talked about how the workforce and leadership are intertwined, like they cannot be detached from each other, right? The Thought Leaders Initiative report was meant to bring the two of them together, to talk about what the workforce was feeling, to talk about what leadership was feeling, and really drive that together in a way that helped everybody move forward. So I want to talk about it in 3 different periods, right? So if you look at the terms on the screen right now, generally speaking, these were the first 12 years of my career. This was all the kind of topics that were popular at the time. And at some point, when you look at this list now, I don't think they've aged very well, right? The things that we cared about early on were kind of stupid. And I wonder if any of you even remember any of this stuff. Most of you are too young to even know this stuff. But at some point, it was a different time. It was a very employer-led time. Everything focused about the company that you worked for and only the company you worked for. And you had to get the perfect degree and had to get the perfect pedigree. And go to work for the big company, and then you'd be taken care of for the rest of your life. That was the promise that my dad had, my father-in-law had, and they lived it. But that promise changed really in 2009 when the Great Recession hit. And that was so traumatic and so deep, and the biggest trauma of our lives so far, COVID included. Businesses were tough. Recessions were high. Layoffs were high. Our 401k became a 201k. There was a lot of fear, a lot of terror. People didn't know what to do. It was a really big deal. But that was an impetus for change. As we now look at the period, the second period between 2009 and 2020, the rise of the individual happened, right? No longer were you tied only to that company, right? There was no long-term contracts. There was that social contract of work between the employer and the employer was kind of broken. You could no longer trust your company to feed your family as they had done before. And you had to take responsibility for your work. And so those first couple of years, 2009, 10, 11, 12, that was tough because we were coming out of it, we were readjusting everything. The free agent nation was born then, right? So everybody had a choice, as Jesse suggested, to work for this company or to find a better one, right? You have a responsibility to those you love and those that you care for to make the best situation for yourself and therefore for them. And that didn't necessarily mean that you kept going with the same company. You might have made a job change. And people found out it's lucrative to make job changes, and that didn't help the culture, right? When leaders of companies, managers, directors, vice presidents all left and went to a different company, all of a sudden those long-term strategic development programs began to wane, right? So there was hard to continue programs when the leaders kept changing, right? So the thing about developing our workforce kind of fell by the wayside, and we didn't do it very much. We didn't do it as much as we had. Does anybody agree with that? Does that make sense to you in context? Give me a yes or a shout out or whatever.
Yeah. Amen.
Amen. Okay, good. Everything became about efficiency and cost effectiveness. It's about productivity. It's about robotics and automation and how can I, lose the labor costs? How can I make the most out of what I've got here? Amazon came into vogue big time during this period. The connected systems of Amazon, right? If I was to go to Walmart in Lake Geneva and buy a blue toothbrush today, Walmart knows I did that and is already reordering another one for it, right? It's the connected system. Everything became much faster. Everybody became more independent. Everybody became about themselves and driving their own career, which is good, right? But it wasn't about the companies any longer. So that's a major shift to the other side. And then it happened. COVID happened. And we didn't get much notice, and we didn't get much warning, and it was bigger and bigger than we thought it was, and we didn't know what to do with it, and there was no plan, and HR freaked as they should have, leadership freaked as they should have, employees freaked as they should have, right? It was a big deal. And so the short-term nature of what we were talking about just became shorter, right? It became we need to figure out a way to get this place staffed, we need to make sure it's safe, and we need to make sure we get product out the door, because COVID or not, we still have to pay the bills. And so there are some things about it that were pretty intrinsic to both parts of it, but this is what the employers were thinking about continuation of the business, right? Supply chain shocks, how do we get product out the door? How do we keep our people safe? Do we have to mask? Do we not have to mask? Are we essential employees or not? That's crazy talk, right? Nobody had a plan. There was never a playbook. This has never happened before. And businesses went into survival mode. They went into what we have to do to get things done. If we even stay in business, do we have to downsize people? Do we have to lay them off? Do we have the right people? What? I mean, what? Right? Make sense? All right. No time to plan. Maybe hybrid. Should we think about it? Okay, no, let's not do hybrid, right? Or remote, that kind of thing. So that changed everything again. So if we go back then to the basics that everybody was feeling, now let's look at what the employees are feeling about. This is different than the business continuation model of the employer. It is, are my kids okay? They're doing high school in the basement. Like, what do I do with that? Like, how can I focus on my job and engage at work and do what is asked for me to get paid to have a house for this kid to do high school in the basement? It was rough, and you can see this is a different list necessarily than what the employers were thinking about. So there was a dichotomy happening there that everybody knew we had to do. We were still intertwined, but as Americans do, we had to figure this out. And I will never bet against the American people because we're going to figure this out. We're in the process of that now, right? So quiet quitting, like I'm gonna go to work, I'm gonna do my thing, I'm only gonna do what's asked of me, I'm not gonna have any energy left to do anything more, right? Some people were starting to think about, if I'm not essential, why am I doing this job? Why am I spending my one life doing something that nobody cares if I did it today because I'm not essential? What is this about? And the whole contract of work and how we interact with work changed again, because we're like, if I don't have meaning in my work, if there's no reason for me to do what I'm doing, if I'm in a place that doesn't care about me, doing something that nobody cares is done today, is that really what I should be doing as my kid fails high school in the basement? And so the whole concept of that began to happen, right? So the Great Resignation happened. 2.2 million people quit in 2022 to do something different. The workforce shrank. That does not help. We need more, not less, right? Then they relocated. They're like, why am I paying New York taxes when I can live in Florida and not cheap? If I can work remotely and I can work hybrid or whatever, why am I doing it here? Why aren't I doing it where I belong, where I should be? And so when you put that together, and add a few other things that were happening at the time, I don't know, did anybody recognize these things? Anybody stress about that this morning? It's a mess. These are huge things. Is college worth it? Should I have sent my kids to tech school? The answer is yes. What about AI? Is it going to take over my world? Am I going to lose my job? Should I worry about that? And I would argue right now you should not worry about that. The Thought Leaders Initiative showed me that everybody's talking about AI, but nobody's doing anything about it. Nobody knows how to implement it yet. It will come, but if you're stressing about it now, you got time. Become an early adopter, listen what you can, but it isn't taking over like you think it is. Tariffs, will they be as big of a deal as we think they are? Maybe, maybe not. We'll see, right? Deportations are not happening like we thought, but they are happening more than they should. Labor force size and participation. The boomers are retiring whether you like it or not, whether you think they should or not, whether they want to or not. They're ready to go. And so that's not a real population that we can draw on any further. Like I said, immigration is down, so we're not getting new immigrants to help us, right? What does that leave us? Technology and Gen Z. Who's got Gen Z working for them right now? Anybody less than 27 years old? Okay, the thought leaders have a definite opinion here. We don't get them. We don't know what to do with them. We don't know why they don't want to work, why they don't want to show up, why they don't adhere to their schedule, why they are whiny and needy. And who's with me, right? We don't get it, right? And they have a whole different mindset based on what they've seen from the Great Recession and from COVID and what their parents are going through. They're not going to do it just because you told them to do it. And they may not do it the way you want them to do it or suggest that. But if you give them a chance, they will teach you. They will become the reverse mentors. And at 60% of the people in the Thought Leaders Initiative said, I don't get them. 30% said, maybe they're onto something. Which is tough to hear, isn't it? You're like, anyway. So you take all this, and does anybody's brain feel like this?
Yeah.
I mean, is it any wonder that you guys got out of bed, put one foot in front of the other, and came here today? Because this is what your brain is. This is what our economy is right now. It is a mess. It is complicated. It is fractured. It is different than the easy part of it, the gold watch in the corner office, or the we've gone too far with automation and with being very efficient. We've gone too far. And so then COVID made it all clear that we are a mess. Like, we need to do something different. And what the thought leaders showed me is it is all about leadership. Now, if you think about the last 10 years, the development programs you have in your organizations, maybe there's lip service, maybe there's a formal-ish kind of thing, but it's not what it needs to be, right? Have we failed the millennials? Have we failed this generation? Because we were thinking about short-term shareholder value. We were thinking about the next quarter's reports. Like, it's about today and the money. And again, that period between 2019 and 2009 and 2020, there was a lot of money made. There was a lot of wealth created. So it's not all bad, but we've gone too far. And again, our flaws have been made bare by COVID, right? So we need some leaders. How are your people feeling, Jesse, on Sunday night?
They're so excited to come in the next
It
day.
is perfect.
Great job,
How you feel the day before you're supposed to start your work week says everything about the culture. I know from example, somebody in this room had a problem with Sunday nights. I won't name her name. And so it's not uncommon, right? So if they're feeling freakish about it, they're like, I don't want to go, or I just don't want to be there, you have a problem, right? Getting a sense of how they're feeling then really is kind of the most important thing that you can start with if you haven't gone down that journey yet is, you know what, if you hate coming here, let's talk about that. Let's talk about what it means, why you're feeling that way. I don't want you to feel that way. I don't want to lose you as an employee, but I can't have you bringing that energy into the building. I can't have you do that. And so what can, tell me about it. What's your trauma? What's your deal? Let's try to figure out if this is the right choice for you. Let's figure out what I can do to make that better. Let's take you from a liability to an asset. And so existing leaders recognize that employees crave leadership. They want structure, they want leadership. And if you're not giving it to them, they're going to find it somewhere else, as Jesse talked about. And so we don't really have a choice. We haven't done it well. Existing leaders feel like frauds. I mean, you don't have to raise your hand or whatever, but do you understand when I say, I don't feel qualified to lead this organization? I don't feel like I'm the guy, like me? Like, are you kidding me? Are you thinking this is the right deal? Like, is there nobody better? They don't feel legitimate in what they're doing. And that's, talked about the Gallup 12, that's a Gallup figure, right? Emerging leaders, if we have them, are feeling hesitant to step forward, are feeling like, what, is that really worth it? I get to lead a bunch of traumatized people to do this work? Like, is for $1 more an hour or $2 more? Like, really? I'm good. I'm good where I'm at, right? And so they're hesitant, and they're like, and there's probably good reason for that. But at some point, you've got to make it a safe situation for them to do that. And if you don't, somebody else will. And I don't mean to make that threat lightly, but understand it's a free agent nation. No longer are we defining ourselves because I worked at IBM, right? It is, this is what I do, and I'm going to do it best wherever I can do that, right? If that's an entrepreneurial place, if that's a startup, that's great. If it's IBM, that's great. But at some point, I don't define myself any longer by the companies that I've worked for. It's my skill set, it's my history, it's my life, and I'm going to go do it. And I'd love to do it with you, but if you ain't giving it to me, I'm going to find it somewhere else. Everybody is feeling squeezed. We talked a little bit about Gen Z already. 30% of the workforce will be Gen Z in 5 years. So if we don't get them, if we don't embrace them, if we don't try to figure out what the hell they're trying to say, it's going to get worse. That small workforce is going to get smaller. If you don't make it welcoming, if you don't find a way, and none of this is easy, don't get me wrong, I'm not suggesting it is. But that might mean taking a chance on somebody. That might mean maybe they don't look like I think they should. Maybe it's not the degree that I thought they should have, but give them a chance. And again, I have daughters who are Gen Z, and I look at them like they're weird, but then as I begin to listen to this stuff and hear this stuff, and hear the thoughts of my people in the Thought Leaders Initiative, I began to look at them differently, like, okay, maybe they are weird, but maybe they are also right. And maybe I can learn from them, which, again, I've never said out loud. All right. If you're thinking about hiring people, okay, that's a whole drama, right? It's like, I make my life of new people hiring people. So like, I'm an advocate of hiring new people. But if your process, like right now, any recruiter will tell you, the process by which someone gets hired by a client is a monstrous task right now. Like, you think everybody should be involved in the process, you think it should be 6 weeks, you think that you can't do it any faster, you're not responsive to the market nature of a candidate. They're not going to be there when you finally get around to making a decision, right? So are you thinking about who should be involved in that process, how long that process should be? Are you working with someone to figure out how that process should run, right? It doesn't have to be an efficiency. Christina and Steve and I were talking as we were waiting for the presentation to start. I don't know how HR people get up and do what they're supposed to do. They're supposed to strategically align the workforce to meet the goals of the organization. Now, anybody in HR knows that's tough on a good day. You throw in that monster slide with everybody's head all jumbled up, and on a good day, waking up and getting to work is a pretty good sign. I empathize with their situation and with leaders who are trying to do this. But if you don't have a process that makes it clear why somebody should come to work for you, if you can't answer the question, why should somebody come work for our organization, then that's where you should start. If you don't slow down to make that a cognitive thing, to make it a conscious thing, to say, what is the value proposition that we bring to employees? Why should they care? I had a friend who went to work for a large organization in Waukesha, and the president looked at her and said, I don't know what's wrong. There was a talent acquisition group of people that he assembled to say, I don't know what the problem is. I don't know why you guys are not coming up with candidates. I don't know why people should want to love to work for us. Like, we're a great organization. It's good stuff. Like, let's go. And she was new, and she was brave. And she stood up, and she's like, it's because you believe your own bullshit. Okay, who's thought that in me, right? When you get all myopic and you get into your own world and only have those four walls and stop looking at what's real in the world and start thinking about how great your life is, then you're going to lose. You've got to think about it in a larger context. And I empathize. It's a big deal. We can help. We can help. WCEDA can help. It's good. All right. So the recommendations that came out of the Thought Leaders Initiative are some things to consider. Now, important to note here is you don't have to do them all, and you don't have to do them all today. And you have to think about these and how you might implement them within your organization. These are the best practices that came forth from the conversation. moving in the right direction is more important than speed. Doing things quickly because you can do things quickly and making a PowerPoint, moving in that we got a new direction, it's not going to work if you don't have intentionality behind it. Moving in the right direction is more important than moving quickly. Both are ideal, but if you can't, then start with direction. Building adaptive leadership skills, again, it's a big slide here, and there's a lot to put there, but ultimately, if you're not adapting, innovating, and evolving to the needs of the organization and the people within the organization and the market-driven conditions that you're in, if you're stagnant, if we've always done it that way, if that'll never work here, without being adaptive, and that's the 21st century skill in my word, the words I use every day is adaptation, innovation, evolution. Those are things that have to happen, and that has to be in everything that you do. And if in the absence of that, you're going to fall behind. Your people are not going to be as happy as they are. You're not going to make as much money. You're not going to be as productive. It's not going to be as much fun. What the thought leaders came to me and say is bending but not breaking, flexibility but not rigidness, being able to adapt to the needs that come up all the time. You can see in the 3 periods we talked about, that pre-2009 stuff is not even stuff that's even talked about anymore. Like, this 15 years ago, we don't even talk about that. Like, it's ridiculous how much the change has happened, right? You have to learn to adapt. Development and retention, I can't tell you. Like I said, I know how hard it is to find people. I know that the workforce labor participation rate is lower. The size of the workforce is lower. The needs are higher. That's why hiring is so difficult. If you now add some steps in there where you're the problem, it becomes even worse. So I would suggest, even though I make my living on getting people hired, is focus on retention, focus on developing those people, build a leadership development program, build a leadership identification program, figure out who's the best choice you've got, make the most of them, support them all. Some of them will surprise you. They're not necessarily always the obvious choice. But in the absence of doing that, then you have to come to me and find another one. Conventionally, we say the golden rule, do unto others as you have done unto me. It's now the platinum rule. Do unto others as they want done unto them. Don't treat them don't think that they should value money because you value money. Some want all the overtime they can get, some don't want a damn liquor. Right? So treat them all the same, being monolithic ain't gonna work. They're not the same, they're fractured beyond belief, figure it out. Command and control worked before in the past, and it certainly has its place now, but coaching, mentoring, and counseling, connecting people, making those connections with the community, making those connections within the organization. Do some reverse mentoring. If you got people who need to learn computer skills, put them with the 20-year-old. They'll figure it out. They'll teach them, right? It's interesting, right? Integrating work-life. Having the flexibility to come and go as you need to. Work from home as needed. If I have doctor's appointments, can I just work from home rather than taking a PTO day? Encourage them to take their PTO. Because we all need a break. I'm telling you that's true. Soft skills, it is about storytelling. It is about resiliency and grit. It is not about I am the boss and my dad was the boss and this is how we do it and none of that. We've got to talk about examples and periods of when things worked and when we had some adversity and when we had some trouble. We didn't know what to do. And I, as a leader, I didn't always know what to do. And I came to the people and they helped me. I got some help when I needed it. That's not a sign of strength, it's a sign of weakness, it's a sign of strength. To ask for help when you need it. A lot of this stuff does not have to cost a lot of money. So it's more about communication, it is about making the connection. If you have one conversation with every one of your employees each week, engagement goes up substantially. Make them seen, make them heard, show them why it matters that they were here today. One final thought, what if we train them? I mean, this is what you're going to get when you go back to the leadership of the organization. What if we train them and they lead? Valid question. The real question comes back to that is, What if we don't train them and they stay? Even worse. So I thank you for this. Appreciate your interest. Thought Leaders Initiative report can be sent out. Anybody who wants to receive it, let me know. We can make sure that Leslie just said she'll send a copy to everybody in that. So any further discussions, I'm here for a while, for sure. Thank you.
Yeah, that's, we've heard that one before. That's a really good comparative question. Liz and I were actually just talking about something similar the other day. It's like, hey, you hire a good employee, team member, but they might be a really great seed, but they still require proper soil, water, and sunlight. You gotta invest, you gotta build that in. Then occasionally, you need some pesticide too, because you get the wrong people in the space, and you gotta take care of that deal. But we've got a saying at Adams, and it's a great day to be alive in America. What that means, we say it all the time, ad nauseum. What it means is like, oh, you're having a hard day, like, oh, it's like there are billions of people on the face of the planet that don't need to know our circumstances. They'll trade spots with us right now. And I think that's one of the things that, and ultimately, that everything is perspective and mindset, and it's got to start at the top within the leadership of the organization. If we come in half empty, and we've got kind of a down approach on the business, and Casey and I went to a conference, and this guy was talking about how the team eats at the table that the leaders prepare for them. So whatever food you're putting on that table becomes the diet, and then the result of your team. And so are you putting stress, anxiety, bitterness, all these different things on that table for your team? Because ultimately that's going to be who they are. So I think when it comes to perspective, and like I said earlier, it's nice that it's good to keep people around you that can always reframe that and bring that to light and bear. Liz is a great person for that. She has, as I mentioned, she's done a lot of work with us. She's helped us with some more challenging team members over the years. She's done 16-week leadership courses for us. She's done a lot of different things. But I guess we should give you a formal intro. Liz is an expert in organizational development, psychology, strategic alignment, engagement, and employee development for the past 11 years. She's been doing work with Gateway Technical College. Which, by the way, just as a quick aside, if you guys are not utilizing Gateway Technical College in your businesses for any imaginable resource or thing, you absolutely should be. We're paying, everybody in this room, if you live in Tri-County region, is paying for it, and the amount of services that you don't even know that they have. And I'm saying this as a former 6-year board of trustee member. We've got a trustee in the room who can illuminate you about all the new stuff that's going on at Gateway. You should be utilizing Gateway in your business. And Liz is part of that resource that's done tremendous work. So, Gateway Technical College, Business and Workforce Solutions. She's also worked as an employee assistant counselor for Royal University Health Systems. Prior to that, she led industry publications in healthcare, government, construction, law, and assisting those industries while leading business turnarounds in their own enterprises. Liz holds a master's degree in journalism, organizational psychology, and counseling. We definitely use the counseling. Over the last 8 years, she's has developed WCEDA's fundamentals of leadership at top-level leader programs. And she's going to be having a candid conversation about the sad state of U.S. employment and employee engagement, the conditions necessary to improve, and what each of us can do to build smart, fully engaged workforces. So please welcome Liz Oplatka.
Just listening to Steve's tremendous talk, what I want to do is to start at the end, okay? So here's the thing. The basic human motive is to feel valued by and connected to others in pursuit of something that is larger than ourselves, so that other people turn around and say, thank God you are here. Now think about the managers inside of your organizations and how many of them supervise people who all do exactly the same thing. And how often Do they see those people as extensions of the machines they operate or the processes they supervise? And you can understand why people feel detached from work. And so what we're going to do today is I want to take you guys through the numbers, the stats behind employee engagement, because since I'm the shrink lady, everybody expects me to talk about all kinds of soft stuff, and I have to remind everybody that, in fact, what this is social science, so I'm going to try to give you guys some numbers. I'm going to start out with a story about two companies I've worked with. I'm going to make it so that you can't possibly identify them. Northern Illinois, Southern Wisconsin. By the way, has anybody here been to a presentation post-2020, the year that shall not be named, that hasn't mentioned the pandemic? I don't know when that date is going to be. I actually don't think it's ever going to happen because things have changed so much. But it was the middle of the pandemic, 2020, and I was working with two relatively small manufacturing companies, both in the aerospace industry. In one of those companies, they were doing a great deal of work in preparing leaders in organizational development in all of what we might say is the soft side of leadership. And the other company had me doing a 12-part leadership development course, with slides and stuff like that. And it was great and everything. In the one company, of course, as the pandemic grew so much worse, the aerospace industry basically collapsed, right? And this company made giant things out of metal for airplanes. And the CEO of the company, family-owned company, was really worried, and we'd have these long discussions about how much he cared about his employees and the creativity of his employees and all that he had done to develop his organization. And so he went to his employees and said, we've got these machines, we know these processes, we have these skills, what can we do with it? And they all came back and said, oh, well, that process we can use for making this process, hey, we make giant things out of steel, how about we make big vats for the manufacturing of cleaning supplies? Someone else said that they had a family in the hospital with COVID who had been placed on a ventilator, and there weren't enough ventilators, and so what they were doing was they were sharing ventilators between two people, but there wasn't anything to put the ventilator on. So we could make carts for the ventilators. That company flourished. They did great. In the other company, they did everything they could to keep everybody working, and things slowed down and ultimately stopped. And it was great. They had everybody paint the place. They had everybody clean. They maintained all of their machines. And they sent some folks to training. Except it lasted longer. They didn't have the same engagement in their workforces. And I remember I was called a day when I was going to go in, I just watched the place slowly but surely shut down. And I was called one morning when I was going to be going over there, and I was talking with the HR person who said, I'm calling you because the owner of our company is going to be in town and would like to talk with you when you come in. And I said, sure, no problem, I'll come in a little bit early. I said, okay. And I arrived, and they said, the last 7 people in that room with you, we're going to lay them off today, and we were just wondering if you could make this easier. And I said, I'm really sorry, but you can put lipstick on a pig, it's still a pig. The difference between the two companies was that one was able to make change, right? They were change ready. And they could identify the change imperative. And what that requires is an engaged workforce. In fact, change-ready organizations easily identify the imperative to change. So how do we do that? We do that with strong leadership and employee engagement. We know that, in fact, strong leadership and employee engagement is every bit as important as any process or technical capability. In fact, research shows that if you're going to train people technically, have great leadership first, and then technical training is much more likely to stick with those folks. So just to define this, a friend of mine, his name is Kevin Sheridan, he wrote a book called Building a Magnetic Culture. Whoops. And it turned out to be a New York Times bestseller. It was originally written for geeks like me. That's how important this issue is. He wrote that engaged employees possess an intellectual commitment and emotional bonds like pride, passion, enthusiasm to their employer, and an eagerness to accept both extra discretionary effort and creativity, as well as a willingness to accept personal ownership for their own level of involvement. These are the people who are really with you. How many of you right now, as we're talking about this, are thinking about the people who are really with you? Because those are the folks who are going to help you out. Now, I have some news for you. I'm asking you not to shoot the messenger. I was a newspaper editor for a long time, and I ducked a lot of those bullets. But we've got some facts. The truth is that employee engagement is at an historic low, and there are no signs of improvement. In fact, every quarter for the last 3 quarters, it has fallen. More than half of employees, including managers, are actively seeking new jobs. Well, I go into work today, look around, and wonder, who's looking for an out, okay? A little more than a quarter of managers are engaged in their work. And less than a third of team members are engaged in their work. This is being called the Great Detachment. All of the data I'm going to share with you today all comes from the Gallup organization. They've been studying employee engagement for 25 years. Absolutely a leader in this field. Employee engagement has always been poor. And in fact, it's been poor worldwide. But it's always been consistent. Every year, maybe it changes about a quarter of a point. That's about it. Employee engagement has sunk to a new low not seen in 25 years worldwide. The US and Canada are doing less poorly than the rest of the world, but it's still this way. Most employees are looking to leave and more want to leave. So these are the real numbers. These are the ones that we worry about. So I want you to think about this. Let's take 10 employees. I don't work in percentages of a person, so we won't do like 0.5%, that kind of thing. Okay? Let's take 10 employees. Okay? Let's take 3 of them. Let's put them in that corner. Let's take great care of them. Let's share all that wonderful food with them because they're with us. They're engaged, and we need to keep them happy. Okay? But a startlingly large number, that 17.5%, are actively disengaged. These are people who are trying to undermine the business. These are people who, these are the folks who break stuff, steal stuff, especially time, okay, who badmouth the company in the world. Okay? Just about everybody's got somebody like that. Okay? 17.5%. So let's take 2 out of 10. Let's put them over there and let's watch them very carefully because they can hurt us. Now, let's take the other half. 51.5% who are disengaged. Those are your clock punchers. Those are the folks doing the bare minimum that Steve talked about, right? They're just trying to pull a paycheck, doing what they have to do to keep their jobs. How many of you have shifts that people work on? What's the end of one of your shifts? What time? 3:30? Are there people lining up at 3:15 to punch out? Ah, because you have, and did you have to make a rule because people were trying to do that? Yeah, right? So instead, they're kind of fussing around, right? Those are your disengaged workers. That's half of your workforce. You're paying 10 of them, 3 of them are performing for you. Oh, yikes. Here's the truth. Only 27% of managers are engaged. Managers find it easier. I've haven't been one, although I was never disengaged, but I've seen it. Managers can don't have to show their disengagement. We can hide it a little bit, right? With lots of stuff to shuffle around. 33% of average staff, including managers, say they are thriving at work. So only a third of folks say they're thriving at work. Manager well-being has fallen 9% from 60% to 51%. Shoot. Some 44% say they're struggling at work, and that's a 4% negative change. In fact, 3.2 million more American workers are disengaged in 2025 than disengaged in 2023. Half report they experience unacceptable levels of workplace stress. We start talking about emotional stuff. 17% say they are angry at work daily. Folks in my field worry about people who come to work angry. 22% say their work makes them sad. 15% say they are so isolated that they are lonely. 57% say it's a good climate for finding a new job, and half are looking. Now, you might be like me. People, when I was a counselor, people would come into my office and they'd say, "Oh, you want me to tell you how I feel?" And I'm like, no, really, don't, please, don't, okay? I don't care how you feel, I care how you behave. But here's the truth about feelings. Emotionally unhealthy people don't perform. They put themselves before other people, they take their misery out on other people, they get sick and they get injured and they sue. They're also emotionally contagious. Other people catch it from them. How much does all of this cost? U.S. businesses lose $550 billion a year to disengagement. Opportunity costs are estimated at several times that, but we don't. How do you measure those opportunity costs, right? The chance that someone could have wound up being a superstar for you. A single disengaged employee can cost about $3,400 in lost productivity for every $10,000 in salary. A position experiencing turnover can easily cost 100% to 150% of that employee's salary for 1 year. Anyone here who has over and over and over again onboarded new employees understands that cost in safety, in quality, and productivity. Turnover threatens safety, quality, and productivity, right? So let's look at it like this. You have positions paying $80,000 a year, inclusive of overtime. You have 100 employees. You are at the national average of 69% of your employees either disengaged or actively disengaged. That's a loss of $27,200 per disengaged employee, or $1,876,800 annually. Tell me again why you don't have time to do organizational development and leadership work. Okay, I'm not a bad news person, so I gotta turn this around, okay? This is not rocket surgery, okay? All is not lost. This is gonna take continuous investment. This isn't something you do, we do a leadership development program, but it can't stop. Because all of these programs have a half-life. They only last so long, particularly if every time that person comes back from one of those sessions, you don't bring them into a meeting and say, what did you learn and how can we use it? 42% of employees who quit their jobs in the first quarter said their bosses could have prevented their departures. 37% of workers say they are respected by managers and supervisors. So the thing is that anyone in management, whether it's a trainer, a lead, a supervisor, a manager, a senior manager, an executive, they're either engagement-creating coaches or engagement-destroying bosses. Those relationships affect employee behavior. 70% of employee engagement is dependent on great leadership. So it makes sense to start there. We know that people who have poor leaders lack motivation, and employees who lack motivation have lower productivity. They make more mistakes, they miss more deadlines, and they deliver poor customer service. In other words, disengaged employees cost more and deliver less. So the Gallup organization does this study. There's an annual study, and then they continue it quarterly. And thank you so much, Jesse, where we put you? There he is. Thank you so much, Jesse, for reading the questions to us, because now I don't have to. But these are the things that those measure, because these are the things we know make people care about their work. Folks are looking for recognition. And I don't mean good job, because good job, after a while, starts to sound like good dog. Okay? Like real recognition. I see you. When you do this, the effect is that. And what can we do to work together to create more of that effect? There's career development, and that's something that Steve was talking about, right? In career development, used to be used to climb the ladder, right, to the top. Now we bring people into companies and we say, what here interests you? Oh, I'm interested in that, over there. Cool. And we have a training program ready for you. We have an assessment ready for you. The day you walk in, you have a trained mentor, somebody who understands how people learn and know how to teach, right? Who see them through. We refer to that as the corporate labs. It's my direct supervisor's leadership abilities. Look at that, coming in at number 3. A strategy and mission. Folks actually want to be involved in the mission of their organizations. They want to know their organizations do good work in the world. They want the ability to do what they do best. How many of you spend a bunch of your time doing stuff that isn't what you do best? We put people in these situations. Why do we do that? Because what I don't do best is something somebody else does best. Be thrilled to do, right? Senior management, folks do want a relationship to senior management. It doesn't have to be the closest thing in the world, but they want something. Okay? Open and effective communication. Do I really need to talk much about what we're talking about there? And coworker satisfaction and relationships. The greatest indicator of whether someone will leave an organization is the answer to the question on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being not at all, 5 being absolutely. I have a best friend at work. People do not leave their best friends. Do I have the resources I need to do my job effectively? Or do they say, oh, sorry, we don't have that today. You can go home today. You can come back on Saturday when you'll have to pay for elder care, when you'll have to pay for child care. How long does it take employees to realize that they're paying you for the honor of working for you? And a strong organizational culture and core shared values. That's something Jesse talks about a whole lot. And I really think that it's part of the secret sauce inside of that. Anybody notice that? The money didn't make the list. In fact, it comes in at 14. How about that? Before you celebrate too quickly, a person's position in the organization does matter when it comes to the importance of money. Your hourly lowest paid workers and your least experienced workers, keeping in mind the expenses that those folks face. Your temps, I really can't help you with temps very much, unless they're temp to perm. Because they really are, their jobs are a means to an end, right? Your otherwise uncompensated workers. Steve mentioned these folks. Anybody know what an otherwise uncompensated worker is? A salaried employee. How long does it take someone who has been promoted into a supervisory position to understand that they are making less per hour than the people they supervise? And anybody who's financially stressed. We're all one illness, one natural disaster away from being financially stressed, right? So those are those Gallup Big 12 questions that Jesse mentioned. Here's an idea. Take a look, and you're going to get all the slides back. take a look at these questions and answer these questions twice. Once for yourself and once for your employees. On a scale of 1 to 5, how are we doing? It's just 12 questions. Just notice how many of them are supervisory dependent, right? Management dependent. Someone at work who encourages my development. Someone at work who seems to care about me. Someone who gives me proper recognition. Someone who gives me the materials and equipment I need. Someone who tells me what's expected of me. There's a job description for a leader, and we don't hire to it, right? Got it. And we don't hire to it. There are 4 aspects to this job description. The first of them is self-awareness. Understanding how the way I am affects other people and how the way other people are affect me. If I'm a leader, then also what I have to do is to help the people who work for me understand how they affect one another. It's aligning, and that's displaying a deep alignment with the organization, with its mission, vision, values. Anybody here an ISO company? Yeah, okay, good. So in ISO, you are required to put your mission, vision, values up on the wall. If you wear a lanyard, it's around your neck. So folks, when I do the Fundamentals of Leadership program, I will have people come in with those cards around their necks, and I will ask them, what is your organizational mission? And they freeze. They don't know. And I'll say, so you're an ISO company? And I say, yeah, turn that thing over. Oh yeah, look at that. If I'm not connected to it, if I don't have to know it in order to do my job, it's not going to mean anything to me. Really, what we are is we are the folks who create community inside of our organizations. Because that's really what it is, right? We're a collection of people dedicated to the survival of all. That's a community. What do we do to help build that community? And then lastly, communication. And what communication is really about is building momentum through reading, writing, speaking, and listening with and for meaning. But instead of building momentum with our communication, how often do we use our communication to say, oh God, don't do that, right? Stop it. When really what our communication needs to be is a momentum. So I have a couple ideas for you. This is the work for the life of your organization, okay? So treat it that way. It's a little bit at a time. It isn't all at once. Something Steve brought up earlier. Every year, in every way, with every group, do a little bit of this work. Consider beginning with leadership development, and move on to things like employee action planning, engagement, research, build cohesive teams, address needs that are specific to your organization. But look at it as something you do a little bit at a time. Okay? Whenever I stand up at these things, like the first thing I really want to say is, oh my God, would you guys just let us help you, please? Okay. And that's because neither WCEDA nor Gateway has a profit motive. I get called before our board of trustees from time to time. Jesse's seen me there a few times. And they just have one question. What have you done to help develop business in our region? That's it. And so what I do is I bring in my clients and they tell them, right? And I stand there and they say nice things, right? Would you please just let us help you? The program that we do through WCEDA isn't didactic. It's not a set curriculum. It's actually a dynamic leadership development program. Yeah, we've got slides, but anybody who knows how quickly we dismiss all of that to talk about issues in the room. We discuss their live issues. We utilize coaching techniques. So I model behaviors for them that I hope they will go ahead and model inside of their organizations. I'm a subject matter expert rather than a facilitator who's following a script. Do watch out for stuff like that. It's not just an introduction. They lead with a specific set of skills and tools. And what I always say to folks is the first hour is always free. I hang out afterward. People call me, and we discuss their issues. Okay? If you're wondering about how some of this stuff works, there are lots of folks in the room who can tell you. Christina Stout can tell you, Marianne Hunter can tell you, Jesse can tell you. Some of the folks in here too can help you out with that. We also have something called top level leadership, and that's a program that's aimed at helping senior level leaders and people who are high potential for senior leadership. It's a lot different. It's much more consultative in nature. We help build the skills of senior leadership and help them build leadership throughout their organizations. It's a 40-hour program. And we do behavioral assessment. We do a high level of customization. It's super collaborative, and it's an opportunity to work with different organizations. What can you expect from really paying attention to employee engagement? Well, companies that prioritize leadership and organizational development see a 78% drop in absenteeism, 63% fewer safety incidents, 51% lower turnover in organizations with about a 20% turnover annually. By the way, our turnover rate locally is about 28%. There's 28% less theft and 32% decrease in quality defects, all according to the Gallup organization. Now, there's also a 10% increase in customer loyalty, an 18% increase in productivity, and a 23% increase in profitability if you keep following through. We also do work in employee engagement research and action planning if you're interested in that. I have left you guys with, I think it's a gift to you on your table. It's, hold on a second. You know this, it's like a bunch of words on a page, right? It's called the Leaders Checklist. All of these questions are key to the Gallup Big 12. So all that you have to do is you have lots and lots of copies of these, and everybody in a leadership position in your organization, how many times did I do each of these things over the last week? And I'd even suggest that you use this in helping folks measure their own effectiveness as leaders. It's helpful stuff. It was, I first learned about it at a conference, met a psychologist by Dr. John Guzzo. He and I sat down and we worked on the document. So that's review.